Hello, let's talk about some of the things that I love about living in Australia. And in talking about this, I will try to bring a balanced perspective. I'll talk about the things that I like, the things that I don't like so much, and just give a general impression of how I feel about living in Australia. By the way, my family and I have been here for 8 years now, and I've been meaning to film this video for a long time. I've actually made several attempts to film the video, but I am hoping that this will be my final successful attempt. Okay, so let's get started. My name is Chioma. Welcome to my channel. It's a pleasure to have you here, whether you're a first timer in this space or you're one of my old-time friends. Take a moment to like this video so you don't forget, and you can join the family at any time by subscribing. The first thing I want to talk about is the weather. The weather is one of those factors that sold us on Australia, because I am one person who doesn't tolerate the cold very well. When I hear about people living through -40-degree weather in Canada or even in parts of the USA, I am like, that will never be me. It can never be me. Okay, I just can't imagine it. The winters here in Australia generally are considered mild. Okay, I don't think we would ever hit those kind of extremes. Yes, there are some regions in Australia that are colder than others, and they might actually record sub-zero temperatures, but nothing as crazy as -40, -50-degree weather. No, nothing like that. I still do not like the winters, but I can tolerate the few months of colder weather because I know that the rest of the year is fantastic. It's going to be glorious, okay? For instance, the weather today is 31 degrees, and this is just spring, okay? This is the first month of spring. Granted, we were given a forewarning that this year we might skip spring altogether and go straight to summer. And so far, that experience has been consistent with the warning. But I love it. I would take the heat anytime, any day over cold weather. Even in terms of my mood, my disposition, I have observed that when it is beginning to cool down around April or May, my mood goes with it. I wouldn't say my happiness goes with it, but something changes in my mood. I just become more withdrawn. I don't like the fact that the days are growing shorter and darker. And the reverse is the case around October when daylight savings begins. I don't know how to describe it, but my mood experiences a lift as well. The days grow longer, the days are brighter, the sun is sunning, the sky is bluing, everything is perfect with the world. However, Australia generally is considered to be hot and dry in terms of the climate. Yes, like I said, we still have different weather zones, but the climate generally is hot and dry, and that comes with a few risks as well. And one of those risks would be bushfires. So bushfire season is a thing here in Australia. Depending on how the weather is swinging from year to year, there are years when it is hotter, just like this year 2023. I think it's going to be a lot hotter than the past couple of years, and so there's an increased bushfire risk this year than in the past 2 years. Sometimes the weather swings to the complete opposite, where it's so wet, and there is also then the risk of flooding, and we have had some pretty horrible floods and bushfires in the past few years. But yeah, I mean, nobody likes any of these extremes, but these are things that are beyond our control. So even though I would say that's something that I don't like about Australia, nobody can do anything about it. The next thing I want to talk about is the beautiful natural environment here in Australia. Oh my goodness, Australia is gorgeous. It's so beautiful here. We have iconic beaches. Listen, I read somewhere, and please put it in the comment section. Confirm this for me. I want to know whether this is actually true, because I have read different versions of this from different sources. So I read somewhere that if you were to visit a new beach in Australia every single day, some sources say it would take you up to 27 years to see all of them. But then I have also seen sources that claim that it would take you up to 32 years to see all of the beaches That is mind-blowing. So please confirm that in the comment section for me if you know, if you're really sure. Okay. But apart from the beaches, of course, there is the wildlife. Listen, there are several species of animals and plants you would find here in Australia, but nowhere else around the world. And of course, some of you are going to mention the snakes and spiders. I am so sorry to disappoint you, by the way. I haven't really come across these snakes and spiders that have such a notorious reputation, right? I am so sorry to disappoint you, all of you who have been asking me about snakes and spiders. In relation to spiders, there were spiders in Nigeria as well, okay? Yeah, spiders crawl around in your house as well in Nigeria. So I know that I am speaking specifically to Nigerians now because most of the people who have asked me about snakes and spiders are Nigerians. You know yourselves. Stop it, stop it. In relation to snakes, I have only come across a snake once outside of a zoo, and I think it was justified because I was the one in their territory. I was bushwalking and then I came across this snake, but it wasn't a threatening situation by any means. This snake was a fair distance from me, just sunbathing. Yeah, we were both minding our separate businesses, and as soon as I saw the snake, about turn, I left. I went back the way I came, but that was the only time, and this was like maybe 3 years ago. I've been here for 8 years now, and that's the only time I have encountered a snake in a bush. Keep that in mind. Okay, thank you. That's not to say that, yes, every once in a while we get these snake events where someone finds a snake in their house, but to be honest, back in Nigeria, I can count a few occasions where snakes have crawled into our compound and we have wondered where they came from. So that's all I want to say on that subject. And then Australia's topography is also very interesting. Around the coastal areas, it is green, but the further inland you travel in Australia, it becomes really hot and even drier. As a result of that, there are many iconic places you can visit. There's the Great Barrier Reef, there's Uluru, which is a sacred Aboriginal site. Yeah, and speaking about the Aboriginals, I hope you know that Australia has a Black history and the traditional owners of Australia are actually Black. Since coming here, I also feel like that part of Australia's history is not centered in the way it should be. It is not as celebrated as I think it could be. For instance, I've always wondered, when you come to Australia, and of course down the track I'm going to talk about multiculturalism. When you come to Australia, you can eat Thai food today, Chinese tomorrow, Mexican the following day, Brazilian the other day. You know, there's so many different cultures here. But I have often wondered, I don't know much about the kind of foods in the different Aboriginal countries. And speaking on that, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are not one homogeneous cultural group, okay? There's different Aboriginal countries. I'm not here to give you a history education, but again, that's it. Did you know any of this? There is a lot of political noise around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander affairs. So there's a lot of talk, but maybe not corresponding action. That is just my opinion, okay? And speaking on that, I just want to make a disclaimer that I should have made at the beginning of the video. Everything I am discussing here is my opinion. I am very sure that some people would disagree with me, and that is completely fine. But please bear in mind that I am only speaking from my own experience. Anyways, I started talking about the beautiful natural environment, and see, I went off on a tangent, but there you have it. Australia is a multicultural place. I just love seeing people from different countries around the world. You're exposed to different aspects of a diverse cultural experience. Like I said previously, it's up to you. If you want to eat something, a meal, a dish from a different country every single day, you have your work cut out for you.
Okay. It is very famous in the regions in China. It's called Sichuan. Sichuan region. So in Sichuan, everyone has a pot and they just throw all the food in. And
I also love seeing different cultural festivals. I first learned about Diwali, which is the Festival of Lights, and I believe it is celebrated by people from India. I don't know whether people from Pakistan and Nepal also celebrate the same, because somehow we tend to see Nepalese, Indians, and Pakistanis as having significant overlaps in their culture. But yeah, I learned about Diwali. There's the Chinese Lunar Festival as well, and I believe there's a bunch of others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's so good to see these different cultures. And speaking on that, as an African, right, as a Nigerian, I have met more Africans from different African nations here in Australia than when I was back in Nigeria, which is interesting. Back in Nigeria, every once in a while you would run into someone from another African country. But can I just say that it wasn't a very common experience to run into people from other African nations. But here in Australia, my goodness, I have met groups of Zimbabweans, of Kenyans, of Ghanaians, of Liberians, of Sierra Leoneans, from all over Africa, Sudanese, they're all over the place. And even though Africa as a whole still holds a minority presence here in Australia, I have met more Africans from different African nations here in Australia than back in Nigeria. That's just what I'm trying to say. Australia has a stable economy, and that, I believe, is also part of the reason why some people are attracted to Australia as well. And that stable economy comes with a few benefits. Listen, there will always be room for improvement. I feel like I have to preface the next thing I want to say with that. There is always room for improvement. I do not believe that Australia is a perfect place. Like, it's not a utopia. It has its fair share of social problems as well, even though they've got a really good structure to try to manage those social issues. But some of the benefits that come with the stable economy would be the social security system or the welfare system. So there is Centrelink, there is Medicare. Centrelink is a government agency that handles Australia's social security program. With Centrelink, people can access different types of financial assistance depending on what their personal circumstance is. So there are different subsidies you can access from there, different types of allowances, different types of pensions, and it is just that service that helps to make sure that everyone's basic needs at the very least are met. Like I said previously, there is room for improvement. Even the Centrelink system is not perfect, okay? But coming from a place where we do not even have that kind of arrangement in place, that kind of structure in place, I respect the fact that Australia has something like that. Medicare is the government health insurance scheme that covers everybody who is a permanent resident or a citizen of Australia. Now, of course, you might still want to exercise discretion to take out private health insurance, because sometimes getting into the public health system or the public hospital system, it's a bit of a struggle because the wait times are really long, which is something that I really do not understand about some developed countries, including Australia. I don't understand why the system is that clunky. Back in Nigeria, if you wanted to see a doctor, even in the federal hospital system, you can get an appointment within weeks, okay? You can get an appointment within days. But here, sometimes we're looking at appointments with wait times up to 1 year, even 2 years long. So it's crazy. But of course, the buffer is the primary health care system. So you can always walk into a GP's office, and there are lots of GP's offices around, and see a GP. But at the point where you need to be referred to see a specialist in the government hospital system, that is where you could be screwed if you don't have private health insurance. And that is why it is recommended that you have private health insurance, but it is completely optional. Another aspect of the stable economy obviously would be the high salaries. So Australia happens to have one of the highest minimum wages all across the world. Okay, yes, our salaries are pretty high, even though the cost of living here is high as well. It's a little higher than average. Comparing Australia to other big cities around the world, you would find that Australia usually comes up a little bit more expensive than most other places. And even here in Australia, okay, there are different levels to this thing. I live in Sydney, and everyone agrees that Sydney is the most expensive place to live in Australia. All right. What I have seen is that Yes, even with the inflation and all the other fluctuations in the market all around the world, Australia's economy is quite robust and able to bounce back. Yes, there might be a period of impact, but generally speaking, and in relation to other countries, I find that Australia always exhibits that ability to bounce back. So yeah, there you have it. Another thing I want to talk about is safety and security. Generally, I find Australia to be a safe country. I have always felt safe here. Of course, you're still encouraged to be commonsensical, let me use that word, about your personal safety and the safety of your property as well. It's not recommended that you go to bed without locking your doors or that you park your car and not lock your doors. But even on the occasions when I have forgotten to do those things, I have been generally safe. And when I go out, maybe to take a walk, regardless of the time of day, I usually don't have that feeling of unsafety where I am looking over my shoulders. Yes, I might look over my shoulders because it's just been ingrained, especially coming from where I have come from, to be acutely aware of your surroundings and your personal safety. But I have never really encountered any particular situation that made me feel unsafe. So generally speaking, Australia is a safe country. I love the fact that people here, generally speaking, are not trigger happy. Okay, people are not carrying guns all over the place. That is one thing that gives me peace of mind about Australia. You know, the fact that there are tougher gun ownership laws here. Okay, I'm just going to leave it there. That is not to say that crime does not happen or that violent crime does not happen where people shoot at themselves. It does happen here in Australia, but of course it's nowhere compared to some other countries I could mention, but I'm not going to mention. Okay, and please don't come for me. Have I talked about Australia being family orientated? Yes, so this is a great place to raise a family. I find that Australians just love to have family time. Every long weekend, every kind of holiday, you see people traveling to visit with their parents, okay? You see families traveling to visit grandma, grandpa. You would smell barbecues in backyards, people just throwing a shrimp on the barbie, as they say, and it's such a beautiful thing to witness, right? You see lots of grandparents visiting to look after grandchildren, grandbabies, and the tendency is that when you travel further away from the city, you would be going into residential areas that are more family friendly, so single lot houses with big backyards where kids can play around. It's beautiful to see. Is there anything else I haven't spoken about? Okay, the work culture. The work culture here doesn't feel hierarchical. Okay, there is still a hierarchy, obviously. You would have the usual governance structure. There are reporting lines, obviously, but it doesn't feel hierarchical. And the reason it doesn't feel this way comes down to how workplaces are structured, right? A lot of workplaces operate on this open office plan. Everyone is sitting together, managers and supervisors and their subordinates. I don't like that word subordinates. Let's say junior staff, okay, or mid-level staff or senior staff are all sitting together. There's a very collegial culture around team building and everyone being encouraged to contribute their expertise and their knowledge. And of course, another thing that helps is that Australia is very laid back, generally speaking, and you can see that even in the dressing. People dress to work very casually. That is what I call casual dressing, okay? Very casually. And everyone is on a first name basis. We all eat our lunches together in the same common areas, regardless of what your position is. We're making jokes, we're attending office events together. So it continues to foster that non-hierarchical feeling at work, okay? And I love that, even though there's a little caveat here, and that is I actually do miss dressing up sometimes, okay? What I have found is that my wardrobe is going through a transition that I wasn't even aware was happening until I became aware it was happening, obviously. Suddenly, my clothes are switching into casual dresses, t-shirts, shorts, and my shoes are switching from high-heeled or even heeled shoes to mostly walking shoes and sneakers. And it is incredible because back in Nigeria, when I lived in Nigeria, I had no use for sneakers and walking shoes. That whole sneaker culture did not rub off on me at all, okay? But since coming here, without even being conscious that this is happening, I have noticed that my wardrobe is changing. And sometimes I am not too happy about it. But then even with the few fancy shoes I have or fancy dresses I have, there's nowhere to wear them to, okay? Even when I dress in my fancy clothes and shoes to a place like church, I find that I am overdressed. And somehow your environment shapes you. Your environment exerts an influence on you, whether you know it or not. And at some point you will begin to tone down your dressing or ramp up your dressing depending on the environment that you're in to kind of fit in. Every once in a while, I just dress up for the sake of it, and I'm like, to hell with it, I'm going to dress this way, even though I know that I would appear to be overdressed in that occasion. But I am finding that there are less and less occasions for me to wear my fancy clothes and shoes and bags too. At the end of the day, it's a good thing for my pockets that I am not buying too many fancy, expensive things. But yeah, sometimes I do miss dress-up culture. One thing that I did not mention was the Australian people, of course. Behind all of this are people, real breathing people. So I find Australians generally to be friendly. However, yes, there's a however. The however is they are friendly, they are quite chatty, they want to talk to you, they want to engage with you, but they are not very keen on being your friends. Yeah, so for those of you coming in, especially those of you coming from a culture like Nigeria, where if someone becomes really friendly and chatty with you, you might then see it as a natural progression to go on and exchange numbers or exchange emails and keep in touch. You might find it a bit jarring that you spend time chatting with someone today and the following day this person just gives you a hi and that is it, okay? You might find it a bit jarring. I certainly did find that a bit strange, but yeah. Generally speaking, they are warm, they are friendly, they are curious, okay? They would ask you questions about yourself, they want to know more about you, but it will take a little more for you to actually find and keep your own little tribe of people, so your friends. Making that friendship connection will take a bit more from you. So yes, you will need to take initiative and do things a little differently. The one thing I am going to say in summary is I love being here. There are no regrets at all. On that note, people, I hope this video has been enjoyable, even if a little long. Please don't forget to comment some of the things you love about being in Australia, especially if you have relocated from somewhere else to live here. Leave in the comments some of the things you like or not like about Australia, because it can swing anyway. I will see you again in my next video. Don't forget to like this one. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.